Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really digging into Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book, well, it's not just another self-help guide, is it? It claims to unlock some surprisingly simple secrets. Secrets to building the good habits that actually stick, and maybe more importantly, getting rid of those bad ones we all struggle with. Our goal here is to pull out the most powerful ideas, the really practical stuff, so you can actually use it to, transform things one tiny step at a time.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how he uses that word atomic, right? He defines it as an extremely small amount of a thing, the single irreducible unit of a larger system. It's kind of wild how something that small, that seemingly insignificant, can spark these huge changes. And Clear's own story is pretty compelling, too. He talks about recovering from that awful baseball bat injury in high school and becoming this top athlete and expert, all through just consistently applying these tiny habits. It really shows you the power in the everyday stuff.
That's a really strong start. So one of the first big ideas he hits on is this aggregation of marginal gains, getting 1% better each day. What does that actually look like? Why is that 1% so important?
Well, it matters because it leads to these really significant, almost exponential results over time.
Yeah.
Even if you don't see it right away. Think about that British cycling team example under Dave Brailsford. They were mediocre for nearly a century, right? Only one gold medal. Brailsford came in with this idea. It just improve everything by 1%. Tiny things. Seat comfort, massage gels, you name it. And the math is just, wow. Improve 1% daily for a year, and you're 37 times better. It's huge. But flip side, get 1% worse each day, and you basically decline to almost nothing. It really highlights the impact of those small daily choices.
So it really drives home that where you're going matters way more than where you are right now. The trajectory is key.
Precisely. Yeah. Your outcomes today, they're just a reflection, a lagging measure of your past habits. Like your bank account shows your past spending habits. Your knowledge reflects your past learning habits. It's simple. You get what you repeat. These little daily choices, they compound. It's like changing an airplane's heading just a tiny bit at takeoff. Miles later, you're somewhere completely different. Want to see your future? Just kind of map out the curve of your tiny daily gains or losses over the next decade or two. It's eliminating.
Okay, this is where it gets really relatable for, I think, a lot of us. You start strong with a new habit, full of energy, then bam, you hit a wall. It feels like you're doing the work, but nothing's changing. It's super discouraging. What does the book say is happening there?
Right, and that leads to the big question. Why do we quit? Often right before the breakthrough happens.
Yeah.
The thing is, progress just isn't linear. That's hard. Claire uses this great analogy, the ice cube one. You heat a room, say, from 25 degrees to 31, the ice cube just sits there, frozen. Looks like zero progress. But then, at 32 degrees, boom, it melts instantly. All that energy, all that heating up to 31 degrees, it wasn't wasted. It was stored potential. And that's the plateau of latent potential, or sometimes called the valley of disappointment. That's where people often give up just before things click.
So that whole overnight success thing we hear about, it's really just the part of the iceberg we see after all that stored effort finally breaks through.
Exactly. It's like geological pressure, but for humans.
Yeah.
Tectonic plates grinding for ages, nothing happens, then bam, earthquake. The biggest results, the most powerful outcomes, they're often delayed. So when you finally burst through that plateau, people might call it luck or overnight success. But it was all that consistent work way back when that made it possible.
We're always told, set big goals, aim high. But Atomic Habits pushes back on that a bit, suggesting we focus on systems instead. Why that shift? Why systems over goals?
Because achieving a goal is just momentary. Think about it. Your room's messy. Your goal is to clean it. Okay, you clean it. It's clean now. But if your habits don't change, it's just going to get messy again, right? You end up chasing the same outcome over and over without fixing the cause. The book puts it really bluntly. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Like a coach wants to win the championship, sure, that's the goal. But it's their system recruiting, practice, managing staff that dictates whether they win consistently.
And that connects beautifully to the idea of identity-based habits. That feels like a really profound shift in thinking. How does that work?
Oh, it's a total game changer. It's the difference between saying, I want to write a book, and saying, I am a writer. See the shift. Real lasting behavior change isn't just about outcomes. It's about identity change. The more pride you take in a certain part of your identity, like being someone who exercises or someone who eats healthy, the more motivated you naturally become to keep up the habits tied to it. Every time you make a choice that aligns with that identity, you're essentially casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts then. The book lays out this really simple four-step process for how habits actually form, the habit loop. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's surprisingly simple but powerful. Our brain is constantly running this loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. First, the cue. That's the trigger. Some bit of info that predicts a reward is coming. Could be seeing your gym bag, could be your phone buzzing. Then comes the craving. That's the motivation, the desire for the reward. Maybe it's the stress relief from smoking or the dopamine hit from checking social media. The response is the actual habit you do, lighting the cigarette, opening the app. And finally, the reward. It satisfies that craving, gives you that little hit of pleasure or relief, and basically teaches your brain, hey, remember this action, it worked. It closes the loop.
Wow. It sounds like so much of this is happening automatically under the surface, which would explain why breaking bad habits feels so hard sometimes.
Totally. Habits are basically mental shortcuts,
Yeah.
right? They save brain energy. But yeah, that means we can slip into old, unhelpful patterns without even thinking about it. Like Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. It's so true for habits. That's why awareness is absolutely step one. You have to see your habits first. The book suggests things like a habit scorecard, literally just listing out your daily actions and marking them good, bad, or neutral, just making them visible. Or that pointing and calling technique from the Japanese railways. Operators actually point and say aloud what they're doing. Signal is green. It forces awareness, reduces errors. Even just saying out loud, okay, I'm picking up my phone because I'm bored, can interrupt that unconscious loop.
Okay, so awareness is key. Once we see the habits, how do we actually start changing the loop? The book has those 4 laws of behavior change. Let's start with the first 2, making good habits obvious and attractive.
Right, so the first law is make it obvious. You need clear cues. One way is using implementation intentions. That means being super specific. I will do this habit at this time in this place. Like, I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. on the living room couch. Super clear. Another great one is habit stacking. You link a new habit you want to build onto one you already do. The formula is simple. Current habit, I will new habit. So after I pour my morning coffee, I will think of one thing I'm grateful for. And don't forget your environment. Design it to make cues obvious. Want to take vitamins? Put the bottle right next to your coffee maker. That famous fly sticker in the urinals at Schiphol Airport. Genius. Made the target obvious. Improved aim by 8%. Simple cue. And to break bad habits, you do the opposite. Make it invisible. Hide the cookies. Leave your phone in another room during work hours. Out of sight, out of mind, kind of.
That makes sense. And then making it attractive, that taps right into our desires, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The book talks a lot about dopamine.
Oh yeah, big time. The second law is make it attractive. Habits are fueled by dopamine. But here's the kicker. Dopamine isn't just released when you get the reward. It spikes during the anticipation of the reward. That wanting, that anticipation, can be even stronger than the liking. Think about the excitement before a vacation. Sometimes it's better than the vacation itself. That's dopamine working on you. We're also suckers for what Clear calls supernormal stimuli, these exaggerated versions of reality. Think perfect Instagram lives or junk food engineered to hit that bliss point. They hijack our reward system. So, to make good habits attractive, we can use temptation bundling. Pair something you need to do with something you want to do. Like that student run and burn. He hacked his exercise bike so Netflix would only stream if he pedaled at a certain speed. Doubled exercise with entertainment. Brilliant. And, who we hang out with matters too. Joining a group where the habit you want is the norm makes it way more attractive to join in. Okay, number 3. Make it easy. This sounds almost too simple, but I guess we often make things harder than they need to be. We absolutely do. The third law is make it easy. It taps into a fundamental human tendency, the law of least effort. We naturally drift towards the easiest option. So to build good habits, you got to reduce the friction. Make it easier to do the good thing than the bad thing. Think about Japanese manufacturing. They became world leaders by obsessively removing wasted steps, making everything flow effortlessly. Or think about apps today. Amazon's one-click buy, Uber. They succeed by removing friction, making things incredibly easy. We can do this for ourselves by priming the environment, like laying out your workout clothes the night before, or prepping healthy snacks so they're ready to grab. It just makes the next good action so much easier. It lowers the barrier. It often comes down to these small, decisive moments. That 2-minute window where you choose the easy path or the slightly harder, better path, make the better path easier, which leads to the 2-minute rule. This one's great. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So instead of read before bed, make it read 1 page. Instead of do yoga, make it roll out my yoga mat. It's about making the start so ridiculously easy that you just do it. Momentum builds from there.
Obvious, attractive, easy. Okay, that covers getting started. But what about making it stick? What's the final law for long-term change?
Right. The fourth law, make it satisfying. And this is like the cardinal rule of behavior change. Super important. It boils down to this. What is immediately rewarded gets repeated. What is immediately punished gets avoided. Our brains are wired for now. We evolved in an environment where immediate rewards, food, safety, water, were critical for survival. Long-term planning wasn't the priority.
And that explains why bad habits are just so darn sticky. The pleasure, the relief, it's usually instant, even if the long-term cost is high. That example you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Like the hand-washing study in Karachi. People knew they should wash their hands, but it wasn't happening consistently. The change came when they introduced a better soap. One that smelled good, foamed nicely. It made the act itself immediately pleasant, satisfying. That sensory feedback, that little moment of pleasure, reinforced the habit way better than just knowing it was good for them long term. We can engineer this for ourselves. Want to save money? Maybe every time you skip buying that expensive coffee, you immediately transfer $5 into a fund account. Seeing that balance tick up provides an immediate reward, reinforcing the saving habit. It links immediate satisfaction to your long-term goal.
Okay, that makes sense for reinforcing good habits. What about the flip side, making bad habits unsatisfying? How do we apply that?
That's the inversion. Make it unsatisfying. Basically, you want to introduce some immediate cost or pain to the bad habit. Pain is a very effective teacher, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you use it. The more immediate and certain the consequence, the faster we learn. This is where things like accountability partners or habit contracts are brilliant. Just knowing someone else is checking up on you adds immediate social cost if you slip up. Or that example of Brian Harris, the entrepreneur. He made a contract. If he failed to log his food, he had to pay his trainer $200 and wear a dressy outfit the next day. That immediate financial and social consequence made skipping the log very unsatisfying right now. That's the key immediate consequence.
Okay, those 4 laws seem like a really solid framework. But what about keeping things going long term when the initial excitement fades?
Yeah, that's crucial. And that brings us to what Clear calls the Goldilocks rule. The idea is that we humans hit peak motivation when we're working on tasks that are just right on the edge of our current abilities. Not so easy that we're bored, but not so hard that we get discouraged and quit. It has to be just right. Think about playing a game. Too easy, boring, too hard, frustrating. The most engaging games are the ones that challenge you just enough. Steve Martin's comedy career is a great example he uses. Martin kept adding just a little bit more to his routine, constantly stretching himself, but not too much at once. He got enough small wins to stay motivated, but enough challenge to keep working hard. Finding that sweet spot is key for long-term engagement.
Finding that just right challenge makes sense. But still, even if the challenge is right, repetition can just get boring, can't it? Doing the same thing over and over.
Well, absolutely. And this leads to maybe one of the most profound points in the book, I think. The biggest threat to your success usually isn't failure. It's boredom. Anyone can get hyped up for a bit. But mastery requires practice, endless practice, often on the same fundamentals. Think about elite athletes or musicians. They practice the basics relentlessly. That coach quote is great. The difference between the best and everyone else is often just who can handle the boredom of training every day. Truly successful people, they feel the same lack of motivation sometimes, just like us. They get bored too. The difference is they find a way to show up anyway. Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let their mood dictate their actions. Kind of have to fall in love with the process, even the boring parts. Fall in love with the reps.
Wow. So this whole deep dive into atomic habits, it really hammers home that huge changes don't need these massive disruptive actions. It's more about that consistent, steady commitment to tiny atomic improvements, focusing on what you can actually control each day and understanding how those little things add up, like compound over time. It really is like a small rudder steering a giant ship.
Exactly. And zooming out, it's a powerful reminder that changing your habits isn't just about changing what you do. It's fundamentally about changing who you become. It's about consciously designing your cues, your cravings, your responses, your rewards, making the good stuff obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. When you become the architect of that whole feedback loop, you really can start building the life you want.
Well, hopefully this deep dive has given you some really practical tools and maybe some inspiration to start building your best life, one atomic habit at a time. So maybe think about it. What's one tiny habit you could start or improve on starting this week? Just one small thing. Then, go make it happen.